One thing that can spare you a lot of trouble and potential misfortune is when you have Christ-centered expectations. Because when you look at it carefully, the violences in the world, all the violence, whether it's domestic violence behind closed doors or collective violence in the form of war or genocide, they all originate and are maintained by expectations that people don't examine. Just think about it. The spouse that beats another spouse, why he or she, because also women abusing men, the spouse that abuses the other spouse feels neglected, feels as if the other spouse doesn't meet his or her needs. So they think they have the right to will their will at the expense of the other spouse. They don't want to be held responsible for what they will. So they have their expectation that's not examined, and the environment doesn't hold him or her accountable to those unexamined expectations, because the environment also operates in unexamined expectations that they don't want to face. So that the environment, the people around aren't confronted with their own unexamined expectations, they leave the spouse alone and they think, well, it's a marriage issue, let them deal with it. That's how domestic violence is kept intact. Why? There are unexamined expectations people don't want to look into. Because they don't want to face themselves. So, well, how do you as a believer deal with a world like this? You have Christ-centered expectations. For example, Christ told you it's impossible that offenses won't come. So you know actions against you, wills against you will come. So you develop Christ-centered expectations concerning relationships in which you realize that anytime those people that you form relationships with can turn on you. And you also are mentally prepared to just move further away from them when that time comes. That's a Christ-centered expectation. But a lot of folks have self-centered expectations. Their expectations are they want to find people that reflect them, that contribute to their needs so they are at ease. That is what most people want. So, as a consequence, they form this small circle of people that are important to them, people they put on a pedestal. Those are the people they consider their friends and their relatives, the people that are important to them. But this is idolatry. Why? Because those people are people. So they can err, they can make mistakes, they can mess up. Even if those people that you deem important to you do care about you and they have goodwill towards you, they're still people. And they still can have unexamined expectations that they can use to harm you. So it's idolatry, but that's how most people operate, including many believers. They look for important people to be around them so that they are at ease. So they're not trusting Christ, they're trusting important people. So they are trusting on men instead of relying on Christ. So they don't really trust God at all. They don't trust His word. They trust the important people around them. But if those important people go to church and they have the title of believer, Christian, or saint, they think they're all right. No, you ought to rely on Christ, not on other people. So, that being said, you know now you cannot have self-centered expectations concerning human relationships anymore. You ought to unlearn that. Why? Because when you have self-centered expectations of human relationships, you are already deceived. You are already trapped. And you are already vulnerable to be harmed. And here's the thing. People that hold on to self-centered expectations, they can't look beyond those expectations because they're so into holding on to those expectations. That's how it happens that certain people get involved with so-called friends, and those friends ended up leading them into very bad circumstances. And they're not even aware they've been led into bad circumstances. Why not? Because those friends met their requirements. Those friends validated their expectations. But those expectations weren't good. They thought those expectations were good because they had the so-called good company of people that so-called cared for them. But when you look at the bigger picture, those expectations didn't add up. So also the relationships built on those expectations wouldn't be good either. But a lot of folks don't see that. They don't see this. Look, when it comes to expectations, the world tells you to look at facts. And that's a good thing, to look at facts, because you're dealing with facts eventually. But Christ is telling you to keep him at the center. Because if you focus only on facts, you can get depressed, you can become discouraged, and you can be overwhelmed. Christ tells you to keep him at the center. Why? Because you operate in his power. You agree with him. So of course he has to be at the center. Those in the world who operate in self-centered expectations, they have their external structures that they rely upon. There's nothing wrong with having an external structure, but world people, they rely on those external structures. Those external structures, society is one of them, are their gods. It's all they have. But you, Christ, ought to be your center. He is the center. World people just don't acknowledge this, but he is the center. Look, Christ-centered expectations will not prevent bad stuff from happening to you. Christ-centered expectations, what I'm saying, when your mind is Christ-centered, it anticipates bad stuff. So it can be that a month from now, some of those friends and colleagues you are around are going to do you dirty. But because you have Christ-centered expectations, you already sense that something doesn't add up, and you're already moving on with other people. Now, you don't know what's about to happen, but when it happens, you probably don't even notice it. Why? Because you have Christ-centered expectations, and because of that, you process things in a Christ-centered manner. If Christ said offense will come, and you either have a pessimistic view, as if everything's going wrong with you, or you have this optimistic view that denies Christ's reported offense will come, so you won't anticipate anything, you just hold on to your expectations. If that's you, then you're not in agreement with Christ, because you don't center your expectations around the reports he has given you. Here's another thing. In Christ, you have the power of the Holy Spirit to overcome, to trample upon scorpions and serpents. So if you have that power, then your expectations must be in line with that power. You will not be able to prohibit or prevent bad stuff from happening. You will not be able to prevent the wicked from acting wickedly, because the wicked act wickedly. But in the power of Christ, you will be able to overcome. So your expectations ought to be centered around that also. A lot of folks that keep going to church year in, year out, they never develop Christ-centered expectations. Their expectations are related to being validated by their fellow churchgoers. So they're not really following Christ at all. They're following themselves. Themselves, I mean the group. So it's idolatry. Look, I'm telling you, agree with Christ so you will develop Christ-centered expectations. So you will long for Christ-centered outcomes. Too many of you are not in agreement with Christ, and that's why the enemy has such an easy access to you. Don't get me wrong, if you are in agreement with Christ, the enemy will still come after you. But then you will be guarded with victory when it comes. Well, that's it for now. Agree with Christ, and remember, if people prefer the world and its negativity above fellowshipping with you, who's in the truth, let them remain with the world. Let them remain with Egypt and Egypt's curses. You agree with Christ and be at peace.